Osborne. I'm a councillor and I'm chairing the committee. So the meeting is being held as a virtual meeting using video conferencing facilities and is being streamed live on YouTube. I'm being supported in managing the meeting by a senior officer who is assisting me in monitoring the meeting and alerting me to members of the committee and officers who wish to speak. You will hear him talking to me from time to time during the meeting. It's not bad manners. It's the only way we can communicate. A few more bits of housekeeping for you. First of all, when I finish this housekeeping, a roll call will take place. That's so that members of the public and anybody watching this and speakers tonight can identify a face next to the name and who you are. So please mute your microphone when you're not speaking, because I can hear background noises. For instance, I had a councillor then making a few noises. Speakers who've made representation to speak, again, same as the committee system, you have 3 minutes in which to speak. You will then hear a noise and I will tell you then to please complete your speaking. After that, you won't be able to participate at all in any speaking. So please don't clap, hiss, boo, cheer, or whatever. I'm sure the two of you are not going to do that, but please don't. And voting, as members watching this committee, you won't be able to see people vote. So that the officer on each vote will call the names out and members will respond whether they're for the recommendation or the resolution, against the resolution, or abstain from the resolution. So it may be a resolution to approve, to not allow, or to, well, one or the other. So,
Chairman.
We'll go on. Sorry, Johnny.
Chairman, if I could just interrupt you for a second, can we just pause for a moment? We're having problems with the YouTube connection. Can you just bear with us for a minute or two?
Yeah, no problem.
Chairman, when we wait, I will show you.
You're supposed to be muting.
I know. But no. It's all about paragraph 79.
Well, I can't see it too clear, but
it's all about the future of planning and paragraph 79. Very interesting. Country
Right.
Life this week.
Thank you.
Okay, Chairman, sorry for that short interruption. We seem to be okay now, so please carry on.
Thank you. So now we come to the first part of the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Well, it shouldn't be. Yes, it is. Minutes of the previous meeting. Is it your wish, councillors, that it is a true and correct record of the previous meeting and will be signed as such when possible? And you're going to do a roll call on this, Marina. At least I hope you are. No. Okay. I'm sorry about this. Tony.
Hello.
Yeah. Sorry, Chairman. We need to carry out a roll call for those attending the meeting before we actually move to the minutes, just so we can be satisfied everybody can see and be seen.
Thank you, Tony. Sorry. There you are. I'm sure something would go wrong. So first of all, a roll call for the meeting before we go to that item 1. Over to you, Marina.
Okay. If councillors could just confirm that they can see and hear the proceedings, please. Councillor Alan Chandler.
Can both see and hear. Thank you.
Councillor Daniel Cribbin.
Yes, confirm, can hear and see.
Councillor Stephen Dabbs.
Yes, I can see and hear, thank you.
Councillor Rupert Frost.
Yes, on both counts.
Councillor Jonathan Harris.
Yes, on both counts.
Councillor Cecile Irving Swift.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor David James,
See and hear.
Councillor Malcolm Longley,
Yes, both counts.
Councillor Kevin Parker,
Yes, both counts.
Councillor Ken Ritchie,
Yes, can see and hear.
Councillor Ian Robertson,
Affirm.
Councillor David Smith,
Yes, both.
Councillor Mark Wesley,
Confirm I can see and hear.
and Councillor Steve Osborne.
Yes, I'm here. And confirm. Right. Before I get to item 1, I should have said, besides a load of councillors and members of the public, you will see there are other people besides that. These are officers. First of all, the lady you just heard is the lady, very important lady, who's taking all the minutes for this meeting, who's Marina. And I always refer to the officers and their solicitor by their Christian names. So when you hear Marina called, that's the lady taking the minutes. Tony, who I was talking to a little while ago, is the director responsible for planning, and he will certainly be assisting me greatly in this meeting. There are 2 planning officers here, an area planning officer and a principal planning officer. So we've got Catherine, who's waving her hand now, and we've got Eamon. So when I call those 2, you will know that planning officers. There's one more person, very important person, a lady called Emma, who is our solicitor tonight. And very often we need to have a legal opinion. She doesn't talk very often, but when she does, she certainly advises the committee on where we should be going. Right, that I think I've done it in the right order. Now we go to the minutes. Again, members, is it your wish that they be signed as a true and correct record of the previous minutes of the meeting, please? Now, how are we going to show that? By hand or roll call? Tony?
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. If members are comfortable, if they could do that by a show of hands, a physical show of hands. Okay.
So if you agree, you accept that, put a hand in front of you, members. Right, I can see a hand in front of everybody. Right, so nobody against? Right, nobody's against. Nobody's abstaining from signing the minutes. So the minutes will be signed as a true and correct record when possible. Well, the next part is apologies for absence, please, Marina.
Apologies received from Councillor Peter Matton, Chair.
Thank you. I think it's a full house otherwise. Right, members' interests, you should know by now. Disclosable interest, first of all. Nobody. And party whipping arrangements.
None, Chairman.
Right. To members of the public, that means we don't get together as political bodies or any other groups to decide how we're going to vote beforehand. And don't forget, members, if you find you have a disclosable interest during the meeting, you can declare it just interrupt and declare it at the time. Right, there is one application which has been withdrawn. The applicants ask it to be withdrawn. That is the application on the Watling Street, he says, the Shires applicant. There we are. So I've lost my little list. The application in Norton. So that application has been withdrawn at the request of the applicant. So the first application will be in Preston Capes. So it's over to you, Eamon. No, it isn't.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Chairman. I'll just pull up the application on screen. Oh, wrong one. As ever. Thanks, Chairman. If everyone else can see that, this is the application DA 2019-1087 for a property known as Holly House, Old Forge Lane, Preston Capes. The description of the development is as given in the below. and as set out in the report, which is for the demolition of an existing garage and construction of replacement.
Sorry, if I could just interrupt you there, Eamon, through the chairman. You're actually displaying the wrong application there, Eamon. You're displaying Newnham Drive.
Oh, I've got, beg your pardon, Chairman. Oh, hold on. You got that now?
Yeah.
Well done. Continue then, Eamon.
Let's start again. We still seeing that now, Chairman?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Say DA 2019-1087. It's Holly House, Old Forge Lane, Preston Capes. Demolition of an existing garage and construction of a replacement double garage with rooms above. Members should have the report before them, which sets out the planning history and the officer's consideration of the application. The application site sits centrally within the village itself, with a listed building to the north and within a designated conservation area. And the proposal involves the demolition of existing garage and the construction of a replacement garage with associated greenhouse to the side and alterations to the rear with rooms over. This is elevations of the existing property, and that's the existing garage, which sits to the side. And the proposal is to demolish that garage and to construct a replacement in that location with rooms above. To the side is a greenhouse, and the side elevation shows the greenhouse projecting to the side of the property. And from the other elevations, this is the rear elevation, which will provide access to the rooms above. As you'll see from the report, and as mentioned, the application there has been a previous application approved for a double garage, much similar in design to that now proposed. So in effect, the only difference between the previous approval and now is the addition of the greenhouse to the side and the alterations involving the glazing to the rear. You'll see again from the report, Chairman, that we have received comments from the parish council who have raised concerns about the impact of the development on the conservation area due to its scale and the use of materials. But you'll note below that we've had consultations with the council's conservation officer, who, after some deliberation and discussion with the applicant, has indicated that they're satisfied the proposal does not adversely impact on the character or appearance of the conservation area and is satisfied with the materials proposed. The officer has considered the impact on residential amenity of adjoining properties and judged the proposal to be acceptable. In addition, we have judged the impact on highway safety also to be acceptable, and accordingly, on balance, consider the application should be approved. Accordingly, we're recommending the application be approved, Chairman. I should point out that the applicant is here to speak tonight, and she has provided details of slides that she may well refer to in her discussion. This is slide number 1, which indicates reference to another greenhouse elsewhere in the village. And similarly, slide number 2 indicates reference to another greenhouse elsewhere in the village. I should, however, remind members that each application must be determined on its own merits, and accordingly you must judge the application that is before you, having regard to development plan policy and any other considerations that might be material to your decision. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Eamon. As you said, we have a speaker who is Dr. Brasher, who is the applicant. So, Dr. Brasher, you have 3 minutes from now.
Unfortunately, I'm not Dr. Brasher. My husband's Dr. Brasher, but I'll take it for now.
That's all right. Well, you can be Mrs. Dr. Brasher then.
Okay. So this is all really came about because the parish council objected to the size, scale and materials and the effect upon the nearby listed buildings, which is why we're here at the committee today. I think those have all been thoroughly addressed in the case officer's report and the approval of the new garage, which was granted in September. In the new application, the height, the width and the proximity to the road are identical to the previous approved plans. The purpose of the little oak canopy from the main house to the utility room is just to keep the rain off. It won't have any walls because obviously we need access through to the back garden, and the other access is steps. It's not compatible with the lawnmower. The proposed greenhouse is lower and narrower than the garage. It's set back 7 metres from the road, and it will be densely screened by planting and/or fencing as considered appropriate for condition 6. But the screening is not just to maintain the privacy of our neighbours, but obviously it's ours too, so we do want it there. So we don't consider that the greenhouse will tower over or dominate our neighbours or be highly obtrusive, as was suggested by Mr. Hughes. However, communications received from the Parish Council, despite there's no dialogue, no visit to the site, or didn't seek any opinion of the neighbours as they have done in another application locally, have stated that they unanimously agreed on some comments sent in, and there was some vehement opposition. As we have from the outset been very open with our neighbours about the plans, we were quite surprised at the Parish Council's response. So we ended up entering a freedom of information request to ascertain the apparent strength of the feeling within the village. We received no records of any comments sent in or of any vehement opposition or details of discussions or any other evidence of reasons or opinions for opposition by councillors. Just one comment by one councillor referencing the greenhouse as an expanse of glass. But we have received 3 letters of support from neighbours, 2 of which have been sent to you and 1 is attached. Some comments made by Mr. Hughes and others at the Parish Council repeatedly stated that if we had bothered to attend the Parish Council meeting, we could have persuaded members to support rather than oppose. We didn't attend the meeting because we'd actually had a close death the day before. So we were a little bit offended by this insensitive attitude and failed to see how really, if there was more information they needed in order to reach their conclusion, they could have come back and asked to us. The May Parish Council agenda also has publicly announced that we've cost Preston Capes ratepayers £150. We just hope that the Parish Council bringing this to committee is being a little bit more economical. Walking around Preston Capes, there are lots of lovely greenhouses clearly visible, the ones you've just seen in the screens. And that's all I have to add, really. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Local member, is it Woodford or Whedon? Is Councillor Frost, is it one of yours?
Yes, indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So the
Chairman.
local member speaks first.
Thank you. Eamon, if I can ask you a few questions, it's probably easier in light of how we're doing this if I sort of rattle them all off at once, I'm presuming. The first thing is I've gone through the history of this, and with regards to the previous 3 applications, which were in 2014, 2015 and last year, the first 2 were made by the previous, the whole thing just seems a bit strange. The first 2 were made by the previous owner. I'm just wondering why he made them if he was leaving. But more importantly, what's as I understand it, these were the decision was made under delegated powers, suggesting that the Parish Council didn't object to any of them. I just don't quite understand. It's a shame that effectively we can't ask them why the Parish Council didn't object to the first 3, which are either the same or very similar, and then objected to this. And I wonder if you're able to shed any light on that. Another question number 2 is with regards to the reference to the house at the Wilderness. There were 2 comments by neighbours in support of the application. I presume that I'm not allowed to say whether any of those are from Wilderness. So I suppose it's confirmation that the people there are in agreement with the officer that there's no problem. And then just question 3. I don't know if you're allowed to answer this either, but why? I just wonder why the thing's in stages. why, if this is what's required, why not have it all at once? I realise we have to judge each application on its own merits, but it just always looks strange when applications come in stages, and I wonder if you could shed any light on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Eamon, over to you.
Thanks, Chairman. I think through you, with respect to Councillor Frost, I think you've answered your own third question. You judge the application that's before you on its merits. As to reasons why the previous parish council, the previous applications parish councils have made comments, I can't offer an explanation other than we do have a delegation scheme. If the previous applications were in compliance with that delegation scheme, then they were determined in accordance with the council's procedures. The fact remains is that the current application was subject to consultations. Objections were raised from the parish council, and we accordingly bring it before you tonight for your consideration. I think the other question was about the wilderness. Unfortunately, the speaker has submitted a representation from the occupiers of the wilderness indicating they have no problems with the application. These weren't set out in our report because they were received too late. But notwithstanding that, the officer has assessed the application in terms of its impact on residential amenity, highway safety, and just as importantly, the impact on the character of the conservation area. And on its merits, and across all of those issues, has found the application to be acceptable, and accordingly we're recommending the application be approved, Chairman.
Thank you, Eamon. Right, members,
just
do you want to come back, Rupert?
First of all, thank you, Eamon, for that explanation. You know, I wish I could understand better understand what the problems the parish council have with them, because it does seem pretty reasonable to me. And thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, other members who wish to comment.
Chairman, we've got Councillor Ian Robertson and Councillor David Smith have indicated they'd like to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson first, followed by Councillor Smith. Councillor Robertson. If you are speaking, we can't hear you. Unmute yourself. We still can't hear you, Councillor Robertson.
Unmute.
Aye, we heard you then.
Right. Thank you, Chair. I'll try again. Basically, I was interested to listen to Mrs. Brancher when she said that the parish council had berated her over non-attendance, which she answered at their meeting. It seems rather strange to me that they would berate her in such a way, but they haven't bothered to show up to our meeting tonight to discuss it with us. So I tend to feel that they can't be that bothered about this application. The application itself looks to me to be very nice. I like the look of it. It seems to fit with the building very well, and therefore I propose that we go and accept officer's advice.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? The first hand that I saw there was Councillor David Smith. Well, as he's the next speaker anyway, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, having gone through the application, I can't see anything wrong with it and wholeheartedly support it. So yeah, I would like to see this yeah, swept through. It's a good application, nothing wrong.
Thank you. Tony?
No other speakers indicated, Chairman.
Nobody else wish to speak? Okay. In that case, we have a proposal the application be approved, which has been clearly seconded. All those in favour, over to you, Marina.
Councillors, I will read out your name. If you could declare whether you are for the application, against, or will abstain. Councillor Alan Chandler.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Daniel Cribbin.
For.
Councillor Stephen Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Rupert Frost.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Harris.
For.
Councillor Cecile Irving Swift.
For.
Councillor David James.
For.
Councillor Malcolm Longley.
4.
Councillor Kevin Parker,
4.
Councillor Ken Ritchie,
4.
Councillor Ian Robertson,
4.
Councillor David Smith,
4.
Councillor Mark Wesley.
4.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. The application is approved.
Thank you very much.
Unanimously approved. The next application is in Pitsford, and that is over to you this time, Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll share my screen and have the PowerPoint up.
Have we got the right one? Yeah.
Yes, this is for a site at 65 High Street, Pitsford. It's for a single-storey rear extension and front porch. As you can see, it's in a group of semi-detached dwellings along this aspect of Pitsford. It's not within the conservation area. As you can see, it's got a long garden, and also the property is set back from the main road. You can also, this is the plot plan for the proposed extension. So this is where the front porch is proposed, and this is the rear extension. Now, the proposal has been amended to encourage or show that the materials are more appropriate to the character of the locality, and also the extension has been reduced in depth to 6 metres. So as you can see, it's a sort of a typical semi-detached property with a garage to its side, separating from the other pair of semi-detached properties. So as you can see, this is where the rear extension is going. We have measured the 60-degree line as in accordance with our supplementary planning guidance, and although it impinges slightly, as officers we consider the impact to the amenities of the adjoining neighbours to be deemed acceptable. It is noted that the parish council and sort of a local neighbour has objected to the proposal due to the impact on residential amenity, as you are seeing in the papers before you. These are the pictures of the rear of the property, and this is the neighbour most affected by the proposal. You can see some pictures from the neighbouring property in the moment. This is the property that's going to go, is proposed. As you can see, there's a similar flat roof rear front porch area to next doors. Now, this is the neighbour's property at number 63 High Street. And again, these pictures are taken from the rear of the property. The applicant has also, or the neighbours who are here to speak tonight, have also provided some slides to show sort of the impact on their amenity. Of course, with Photoshop, it's never quite clear, but potentially it gives you some guidance of potentially the impact it could be, but it's not 100% foolproof. We have got another picture of this, but I know the neighbour would like to refer to this plan within his speech. Overall, as officers, it's considered the scheme is acceptable and is recommended for approval. Members' attention is also brought to late representations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. We have one speaker, Mr. Matthew, who is against the application. Mr. Matthew, you have 3 minutes, and over to you.
Thank you. So whilst I appreciate the change has been made from the original proposed court cladding to brick to be more in keeping with the original build, we still wish to strongly object due to the sheer height and scale of the proposed plan. I've taken note that in the planning agenda provided from the Daventry District Council tonight, it suggested that the proposal has been sympathetically designed and will not have an adverse impact on the neighbouring property. We do not believe this is the case. It states the extension is single storey in height, and due to its design of a flat roof, it is considered the neighbouring property will not experience a significant loss of light or overshadowing. It also states the impact incurred to our property would be insignificant and within acceptable limits. This is in no way the case. Although the roof is designed as a flat roof with a slight incline towards the end, it is of extreme height for a single-storey extension and already exceeds the national guidelines before any further growth, which in fact adversely affects the daylight and sunlight currently enjoyed at our property to an unacceptable level. From our point of view, this is not within acceptable limits by any means. This will affect sunlight entering the property from midday, not late afternoon as stated, but also due to the height overshadow our living area throughout the whole day. The green roof is also of concern as it obviously has the potential to further increase the height as it matures, with the potential for the green area to grow to thick, dense, long grass, plants and weeds, which will of course add to the height and increase further overshadowing to our property. After researching green roofs, it appears that maintenance of these types of roofs are more frequent than a standard style roof, as it is in line with our bedroom window, which is quite large and low to the ground. I also consider this a privacy issue. Sunlight and daylight are valued elements in a good quality living environment, reducing the need for electric light and contributing towards meeting heating requirements. Not only will it block light from our lounge, but also remove sunlight from our outdoor seating area due to the height and scale. Taking into account that also the high street inclines, so our patio is over a foot lower to the adjoining land. I'd also like to add that previous extensions in the high street have always been approved, with the proposals being on the opposite side of the adjoining property to minimise the impact on neighbours. This seems to have set a precedent over the years, and I did provide some examples of previous applications that have been refused on these grounds. I also included some pictures which you've seen in those slides. We also attended the parish council meeting where I believe they've also lodged a similar objection. And we would be most grateful if you consider our concerns and the negative impact this would have on our living area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There is no local member, so members in general. Right, Tony, well, there's a few hands there.
Yeah, Councillor David Smith has used his hand on the system. There's a few waving if they could indicate by selecting the blue hand as we advised earlier.
Okay,
but
so
at the moment, you've got Councillor David Smith and Councillor Stephen Dabbs.
Okay, Councillor Smith first, followed by Councillor Dabbs. And Councillor Smith.
Okay, if I could just, I did see Councillor James did get his hand up first, so if he would like to go first, he can. With your blessing, of course, Chair.
Okay, well, Councillor James, you've got the option to go first before Councillor Smith if you want to.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I've read the officer's report on this, and I must say I'm very concerned about this application. The extension is very, very large indeed. In fact, judging by the dimensions, I know for a fact that there are small bungalows built in Northamptonshire that are darn near as large as that. Now, the problem is here is not only the existing one, where the massing of it, the height of it will have some effect. And I think this has been accepted. It will have some effect on sunlight, for example, on the adjoining neighbour, but there is the potential for the adjoining neighbour to have his property further affected should either of the neighbours on the other side of him take up their permitted development rights to add small extensions to their houses. So I can see that this neighbour is rightly concerned, not only about the current one, which is a large concern, but also the fact that this could happen again and he would be completely hemmed in. So I don't think it's appropriate on the grounds of its height and its massing. As to its design with the particular roof, we have had an example of this recently at another village surrounding on the edge of Northampton, where an extension like that has caused an awful lot of trouble between the neighbours. And this came up, I believe it was the last planning committee, or it may have been the last planning committee but one. But I can see the same thing happening here. It is already a great height. Now, whatever that garden has on it could also grow a little bit more as well. So there's a question of privacy comes into it. too. So I'm very concerned about the application, and I don't think I can support it in any way at all. Now, I accept that the applicant has the right, the permitted development right, to build a small extension on the back there that one couldn't do anything about if he were to submit an application for if he were to proceed on that basis. And I suspect that it wouldn't have the same effect because it would be of a much smaller depth. But I can't support this application as it is. I have to say that. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, the planning officer would like to respond.
Catherine?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to remind officers that each application is taking on its own planning merits, and we can only go with the information which we've got beforehand, before us, and also the current situation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Catherine. Right, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I concur very much with Councillor James. Without doubt, there would be loss of light to the neighbouring property, and I think much earlier in the day than has been indicated. If you look at the plan, you see the orientation of the property, that the sun will track round from the right around to the left. I have big concerns. I think the massing is substantial, to say the least. I understand the 60-degree rule. Yeah, I know it's slight, and of course there has to be a degree of variance or allowance on that. I think we've got a huge development, could be regarded as an overdevelopment, the massing, and the loss of residential amenity with regard to sunlight into the house itself. So I really cannot support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Dabbs.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I find myself in alignment with the previous two speakers, actually. What I picked up on when I was going through the papers was the 60-degree rule. I just wondering, do we have a drawing with that actually on there so we see the infringement? I mean, to my mind, an infringement is an infringement. And if it's infringing on this 60 degrees, then as the other two speakers have suggested, the development is too big. So I think on that basis, I cannot support it.
Thank you. I'll ask Catherine if she can. Is there any way you can demonstrate what the difference would be on the? Should it be the 60-degree spot on?
Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine.
I can. Just bear with me. I'm just going to share the screen. So if I get to the relevant sort of picture frame, we've actually measured it as officers ourselves, and the infringement is around here.
So what is the distance? So
the distance I haven't measured, but it's not even a metre. It's not even a half metre. But sort of it's measured from the halfway of the adjoining neighbour's window. And of course, the adjoining neighbour's window is quite large. So sort of here area, if I highlight red there from there.
So the length, it's the length of the extension is less than a half a metre or similar to half a metre, and it's not affected by the height.
No, the 60-degree rule is not affected by the height. So at the moment, the impinge is not great at all. But then again, that is only guidance. But if members consider that the impact is so significant enough to warrant refusal, then that's the choice of members tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Tony.
Yeah, Chairman, you've got three other speakers, Councillor Irving Swift, Councillor Robinson and Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you very much. Councillor Irving Swift.
Thank you, Chairman. That is where the progress with Zoom is very, very difficult because we don't have the true interaction. And as Catherine said, the thing is the speaker very eloquently put his case and Photoshop. And I would like to ask Catherine if it's possible, if it is really what he will see, because what he showed is quite awful, but I'm not sure it is a reality. And because it sounds so massive, which I didn't see that mass when I looked at the plan. And if it's an exaggeration, we might be tempted to overreact because we saw that picture with a white board. So could Catherine comment, and if that is not the case, I will propose to go with officer advice, please, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Catherine, can you answer that question?
No, I can, thank you, Chairman. If I share the presentation again, and if I go to the photos which the neighbour has provided. So you can see these panels are probably 2 metre fence panels in height. The extension is about 3.3 at the boundary, extending from the end here 6 metres. So potentially, yeah, the length of it is roughly the same. However, the height could be different, but it is similar potentially to what you may see to what would be built if members actually wanted to approve this application.
Thank you, Catherine. Right, back to you, Councillor Irving-Swift. Does your proposition still stand or not?
Well, with that explanation, I think I will, due to the shadow, and if it is just a third less, I do think it will have a tremendous impact on the neighbour. So I will go against officer advice in that case.
Yeah, okay.
So I propose we go against officer advice, and the reason is, I'm sure Catherine could find a way of putting the right way. It's about the loss of.
Pick it up, or I'll take your number.
Is that right or not, Catherine?
Excuse me for a second then. You wouldn't believe it, but while we're having a Zoom meeting, I've got a van parked a foot from my door, 2 people eating food in it, and one of them just opened the window and dropped a bag full of the waste food outside, 3 foot away from me. So I just left for a second and told them what would happen if they didn't pick it up. So I apologise for that. So have you proposed refusal, Councillor
Yes.
Irving-Swift?
Yes.
On what grounds? Mass and size or what?
Size and overbearing of the neighbour. It's against the neighbour. How could we put it?
If I can help, from listening to the debate so far, sort of there's some quite big concerns about loss of light, overbearing, yes, and massing, yes, onto the adjoining neighbour.
Yes, yes,
right.
That will be.
So that's your reason.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a seconder? Right. Who was the first, Tony?
Councillor David Smith, Chairman, was first hand I saw.
Right. So, Councillor Smith, do you wish to add anything to what you talked about earlier on?
No, I think we've been fairly clear in planning objections on this one.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Robinson is the next speaker. Councillor Robinson, we can't hear you again.
You can now, I think.
Yes, we can now.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Basically, I'd just like to ask Catherine, if I may, how much bigger is this back extension than would be just simply permitted development?
Well, I think she just answered that, about a half a metre. Catherine, do you want to?
No, sorry, I think got confused earlier in the sense of what was the question about the 60-degree rule, but it's for, as it's a semi-detached, without needing planning permission, it's 3 metres.
And this is?
6 metres.
Right.
Well, in that case, I must say, I think it's too big. And I would, in that case, go along with what Councillor Owen Smith has just said. I think it's massive.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Ritchie is the next speaker.
Thank you, Chair. I think I go along with the drift of what others have already said, but I've got to admit I'm not quite as certain. Certainly, if there is an infringement, even if it is only a very, very small one of a 60-degree rule or any other rule, then that is something that should be changed, that should be, that should be remedied. It's a single-story extension. The photograph that we've received of them holding up a board that gives the outline of what the house might be from the neighbour's garden, that looked like a very high first floor extension. If you look at the line from what I can remember of that photo, don't necessarily go all the way back to look at it again, but it just struck me that that was a lot higher than you would expect a first floor, a one-story extension to be. The other question that's going around in my mind, I don't know if green roofs are a bit like hedges. You can restrict the height of a wall, but by the time people start growing hedges, that's another matter. Is a green roof, and excuse my ignorance of these things, does a green roof actually require any significant amount of attention during a growing season? Because if it does, the idea that you have effectively an elevated garden outside somebody else's bedroom window, I would have thought was, was totally unacceptable. But can you advise us of what this actually means?
Catherine?
Thank you, Chair. Well, you can get, there's a huge amount of green roofs now out on sort of the market. You've got very
your voice is cut out.
If members were minded to approve this, can you hear me?
We can now, yes.
Yeah. With green roofs, there is a variation of the types of green roofs, and if members were actually minded to approve this application, we could actually put a condition for details to be submitted to us to ensure it was that type of green roof which was appropriate for that area and didn't grow to a massive height. Most of the green roofs I know are very small and sort of very low growing. In response to your other question, Councillor Ritchie, about the height, you do get some single-story extensions of that height. I suppose what is different about this application is it's a flat roof rather than one with a pitched roof, where you would expect the eaves to be sort of slightly lower, whereas this one is a flat roof extension, so it's similar to other similar applications like that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, any more speakers?
Yes, Chairman, we've got Councillor Harris and Councillor Wesley waiting to speak.
Right, Councillor Harris first, followed by Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. I echo the comments that have been made thus far. This is one of those applications that if we applied a common sense test, which I know doesn't exist under planning law, I think we would all agree that it's a rather large extension. And I think if we were in a similar situation as neighbours, we would all be very concerned about the amount of light that it will be blocking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, sort of agree. Don't want to bore everyone. heard. I think I'm agreeing with everybody else on this. What does concern me, though, is that picture that was presented by the speaker. I mean, you're trying to make objective views here. To me, just looking at a 6-foot fence panel, that vision that we've been given, to me, looks to be over 4 meters high. I really don't think we should be swayed by that. And I think if we do get pictures like this into the meeting, we should have some sort of test as to their validity. I do think overall, I thought it was too big before seeing that picture, but I'm just saying I do feel that Photoshop pic is a little bit exaggerated, and I don't think it helps the meeting in looking at it. Maybe I'm wrong, but it does look a little bit extended. But I do agree with the other speakers up to now.
Thank you. So no more speakers?
Chairman, Councillor Chandler wishes to speak.
Councillor Chandler, then.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to agree with the previous speaker in that the Photoshop image is, I think, misleading. However, the planning officer has confirmed the height of this extension as 6 meters, which is very nearly 20 feet. And that seems rather excessive for a so-called single-story extension. So I'm not really happy with that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. If there are no more speakers now,
Chairman, Councillor Irving Swift is indicating she wants to speak.
Yes, you've got to do it with the arrows.
Yes,
Councillor Irving Swift.
No, but Councillor Chandler, I think, if I understand correctly, Catherine didn't speak about the height. She spoke about the length of the building. Is that right?
I think you're right.
Yes, yes. Yes, it's 6 meters in length from the rear of the property, not height.
Yeah, okay. Right, there are no more speakers now. So we have a proposal the application be refused because of mass and size, which has been seconded. All those in favour? We will now go a roll call to see if you are in favour or not in favour. Over to you, Marina.
Okay. Again, councillors, if you could just declare whether you are for, against or abstaining from the proposition to refuse the application. Councillor Alan Chandler.
For, Chairman.
Councillor Daniel Cribbin.
For.
Councillor Stephen Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Rupert Frost.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Harris.
Against.
Councillor Cecile Irving Swift.
For.
Councillor David James.
For.
Councillor Malcolm Longley.
Are you there, Malcolm? Are you there, Malcolm? No.
He's gone.
Muted. For.
Yep.
Give me an answer.
Councillor Kevin Parker.
Kevin, are you there?
For.
Councillor Ken Ritchie.
For.
Councillor Ian Robertson.
For.
Councillor David Smith.
For.
Councillor Mark Wesley.
For.
Okay.
Right. What's the count?
That is 12 voting in favour of refusal and 1 against.
Can I just clarify, just on a point of order, Chair, that we were, because I may have got it the wrong way around, we were voting for the amendment to go against officers' advice. If that's the case, then I'm with that amendment.
Oh, you had your vote the wrong way round. Yeah, we were voting to refuse the application.
In that case, I agree with that decision.
Right. Can you alter that then, Marina, so that it's unanimous now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the application is refused, and it's unanimous that it was refused as well. Well, that concludes the business on the planning committee tonight. Can I thank you for all attending?
Chairman, yes? Sorry, we've still one application to go.
Oh well, I tried to get away from it. I do apologise. A very important one as well. I don't know who the applicant is. but it's Daventry. Over to you, Eamon.
Thanks, Chairman. Well, make sure I get this right. All right, that's the wrong one again.
Yeah, that's Preston Capes.
Yeah, that's the one you saw earlier, Chairman. And here we go.
Yeah, yep, that's correct.
So, Chairman, as indicated on the first slide, this is an application by Daventry District Council effectively for alterations to an existing road that connects Middlemore Residential Estate with Heartlands Industrial Estate at the north end of the town. As you can see from the location plan, Middlemore Residential Estate has been developed over a number of years with various applications, as has the Heartlands Industrial Estate. The road and connection is outlined in red and historically was intended to provide access for public transport vehicles only. However, as the residential estate has been developed, the road has been used by local residents basically to gain access from the residential estate through to the A45 via the Heartlands estate roads. This has led to some concerns about traffic safety, etc. And although these incidents do happen, the road, as I understand it, is unadopted. So any road regulations are unenforceable at present. In recognition of this, however, the council is proposing to widen the road and to introduce a priority system whereby those vehicles leaving Middlemore give way to those vehicles coming in to the Middlemore estate. The result is some alterations to the road itself in terms of some narrowing at that point where the priority is to be given, and widening of the road to allow for two-way passage of vehicles. You'll see from the report that we have consulted on the application, and we have also publicised the application. And on page 40, there are representations from a local neighbouring property who have raised concerns about increased traffic, noise and disturbance. You'll see also the Highway Authority have not raised any objections. There are a number of benefits to the proposal in that it addresses any concerns about highway safety, plus provides an alternative means of getting into and out of the residential estate other than going through to the A361. In addition to that, the alterations will provide for future aspirations to develop a cycleway that will link the old railway line eventually through to Braunston and via the canal. These, of course, are not before us tonight. What is before you tonight is the alterations to Farnborough Drive, as shown on that slide, Chairman. On balance, we have had consideration to the representations received, but judged the application to be acceptable in planning terms, and accordingly recommending the application be approved, subject to the conditions set out in the report, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Eamon. We have two local members here tonight. Councillor Ritchie, you go first, followed by Councillor James. Can't hear you, Councillor Ritchie. So you must be muted.
I beg your pardon. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
No, I do of course support this application. There are a lot of people in Middlemore who think that the district council was entirely daft in building this road as a single carriageway road to begin with, or a single lane road to begin with. I hope that the message has got through that if you're going to have any estate the size of Middlemore, then you need to have more than one entrance exit. And of course, that was demonstrated when we had the problems recently when they wanted to do roadworks at the other end of Middlemore, around about the roundabout on the 361. So I think, you know, I can't think that other than the one person that has responded and has been reported in our papers, that there'll be anybody else in Middlemore whose reaction to this was not about time to actually get this thing done. There are, however, two things that I would like to raise. The first is that I know that some of us had argued that this road should be widened before construction work began on the retirement homes at Middlemore, just at the end of this particular stretch of road, and then across the road from it, there is a new estate being built by Futures. The rules that are in place at the moment are that no construction traffic should come through Middlemore. They should get to these sites through Heartlands and along this particular stretch of road. Now, I think there'll be great concern if that was relaxed. I know that it is going to be difficult working on a road that presumably means short-term closures of it, when that is the only road that that allows the construction vehicles to get to their their different sites. But I feel that there ought to be a condition. Seems strange, Daventry imposing a condition in itself, but I think that from the point of view of Middlemore residents, and make it quite clear that the prohibition on construction traffic coming all the way along Farnborough Drive from the E361 will remain in force, and it's up to Daventry to find a way in which you can actually construct a road, minimizing the the difficulties in actually closing it for these traffic. I've got a second issue, and officers will need to advise me if this is something that we can really talk about as a planning committee. Some of you will recall that back in 2017, when we had a long discussion and approved the application for the retirement homes, at that time, there was a long discussion about parking. There were suggestions from the county council and others that the applicant had not given nearly enough parking within the actual village, the area that it was developing, and there were concerns that people would park, or visitors to see their relatives in a retirement home would park as a result outside on Farnborough Drive or in neighbouring roads. Now, I mean, it was resolved at the time. I mean, we did decide that there had to be a condition that I can't remember the precise wording, but it was saying that there, that the use of a sale agreement or something of that nature would need to be explored to to make sure that the the developer, you'll need to look through your minutes. I think it was sometime in 2017 that we had that meeting. Now, the issue was raised again when Futures application went through on the other side of the road. I can remember raising the concern that by approving that application, that any space that there might have been for overspill parking from the retirement homes was being built upon. Now, I just feel in these circumstances, I would want it to be clear that what we are going to get is a two-way road from Middlemore through to the Heartlands, and that we're not approving simply an overspill extension to a car park for a new estate that's being built. Is there a case for saying that in this particular bit of the road, there should be yellow lines?
Thank you. We'll ask the officers. Officers, Eamon?
Again, Chairman, I think dealing with the first point through you, in terms of construction traffic and imposing conditions, and the legal advisor may be able to offer more robust advice on this, but my understanding is, as a district council, the expectations is that it will act responsibly in implementing its development. And in any case, it would not be possible for the local planning authority to enforce conditions against itself. So even if conditions were imposed, they couldn't be enforced. But then again, the expectation is the local district council would fully comply with any conditions imposed by the local planning authority. So really it's a matter for members to decide whether or not it's reasonable or necessary to impose conditions upon itself in the carrying out of the development. Turning to the other query about previous planning applications in the vicinity, what I would have to say, those applications were determined on their own individual merits and will have had regard to the various issues that you've referred to, Chairman Councillor Ritchie, in terms of parking, etc., etc. And those particular applications were subject to detailed discussions in terms of the layout, but also subject to conditions and Section 106 obligations to address those matters that were of concern, including parking arrangements, etc. So in that sense, you've heard me say this before, but you deal with the application that's before you tonight and decide whether or not on its planning merits it is acceptable. What we would say is that the proposal is acknowledging concerns that exist with respect to the current use of the road. It's looking to widen that and to provide a priority going in and out of Middlemore from that direction and to address highway safety concerns. So on that basis, it is providing a solution to a problem that exists on that side of the estate. But you must judge that application on its own particular merits, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Councillor Ritchie's indicated he wants to speak again. There are other speakers, but
yes, he can come back if it's a quick one, because then I'm going to the other local member. Councillor Ritchie.
Yeah, thank you. I just looking at my papers, the discussion that was held in September 2017. It was again the issue of overspill parking, and the amendment was one of the Section 106 obligations in order to cover overspill parking that might occur as a result of the development. And the change was as follows. I'm reading from the minutes. The change was contributions to the provisions of traffic control to prevent and accommodate overspill parking on Farnborough Drive adjacent the application site. There's probably a word that is missing there. But it strikes me that we passed that. But by the subsequent decisions that we have taken, there is no way that we could actually implement that because we have used up all the space. Now, I think that's a thing that we have got to accept, but I would be very, I was if we should not at this stage make sure that we are not simply creating an overspill car park for the residential, for retirement homes, instead of truly extending the road.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. All right, Councillor James is the other local member.
Thank you, Chairman. Very welcome application, because this issue has been kicking about since Chris Long was the councillor. And I think about 6 or 7 years ago, if I remember right, Chris Long carried out a little bit of a referendum on the estate, and most people were in favour of the widening of the busway. And ever since then, at every residents' meeting, something comes up about the roads. It's an embarrassment to those of us that attend those meetings. It's an embarrassment to the secretary and the officers of the Middlemore Residents Association. Now here at last, we've got an application for planning permission. I understand that tenders are out, and of course the money is already in the budget to get this work done. It may well be the case that we shall get it done within this financial year before the unitary takes over. It would be lovely to think so. And I see that from the application, they have made provision for extension of the footpath at the relevant point, and also for connection to the cycle pathway. And hopefully we should be getting quite shortly a planning application for that too. And then our duty to Middlemore, particularly as the development was really, as far as the roads are concerned, carried out by DDC, we should have discharged most of those obligations. So I'm quite happy to propose this application as it is on the sheet tonight, that we go with officers' advice on this. I accept Councillor Rich's arguments about parking. We've had long discussions about the parking problem at Middlemore. That, of course, is something which there's very little that can be done about that. And when Councillor Ritchie did mention that, I immediately sprang to mind to me the question of enforcement. Well, how could you enforce that? I mean, we can't even enforce any regulations on the roads through there as it is, because they're unadopted. So unless you had someone there on site 24 hours a day, there's not much we could do about that. If people want to break that we make up, they'll break them. But nevertheless, it was a good point for Councillor Ritchie to have made. And I'm quite happy to propose that we go with this one as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Do you have a seconder?
Chairman, Councillor Longley.
Okay. Councillor Longley, you wish to second? We can't hear you. You're muted.
Yes, I'm very pleased to second that.
Okay. Right. Okay. The next person to speak. Who wishes to speak next, Tony?
Chairman, we've got Councillor Wesley and Councillor Dabbs. Councillor Longley did have his hand up to speak. I don't know if he wants to still use that opportunity.
Yes, he does.
Well, in fact, you can speak now because you seconded, so you jump the queue if you second.
Well, I will be brief. Councillor James and Councillor Ritchie have very good local, intimate knowledge of the area, as indeed do I, as it's part of my council remit. And this is so long overdue, and loads of people use it anyway. It's one of those things really should have been done many years ago. My personal view, again on the yellow lines, is that may be the case in the future. I wouldn't do it at this stage, but I think we've got to keep careful on it, and it may well come to that in the end. But David did touch on the cycle path, and both he and I have been very close to that, and we'll know that that's the planning on that is well advanced, as indeed is the financial contribution to it. So we're very much looking forward to that coming along as well. So the whole thing is moving very much in the right direction. I'm very pleased to be able to second it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Councillor Wesley. We can't hear you.
So I just unmuted myself now. It's a little bit
that's
slow.
all right.
Thank you for letting me speak. Obviously, going against this would be at my peril. I think anyone that does go against it would be lynched by the residents of Middlemore. It is high time this road was extended. It's obviously, for me, slight madness that with the various bits of construction that have gone on, the things weren't actually done all at the same time. I do concur with Councillor Ritchie. I do think there may be issues with people using it as a car park, and we do need to keep a close eye on it. The thing that I can't quite work out from the papers and the documents that I can see on my screens here is how cyclists and walkers actually traverse and get back onto the railway line both ways with the new path going in. It just worries me when I see cars going down that hill. I know coming out of Middlemore they're going to have to yield to cars coming onto Middlemore, but at the moment cars go down that hill very fast. When you chicane roads, the nice people amongst us do try and race the car coming the other way so they don't have to stop. And that there's two crossing points where this road is being widened, and on that chicane there's two. One is the railway line, and one is the small path that runs around Middlemore and at the side of Middlemore. And if you're coming down the hill as a cyclist and you want to go onto the railway line, I just wonder how this works in that chicane, because I personally can't work it out. Because my view is that cyclists and pedestrians should actually have priority over cars at this crossing point, not just cars coming onto Middlemore having priority over cars coming the other way. We're going to be putting in a major development here, which is the pathway to Braunston. And I think going forward, this is going to be really, really welcomed by Braunston and Daventry. And I think it could be spoiled by there being a slight raceway here. And I think it's a real shame that pedestrians and cyclists don't get priority on this, with cars yielding both ways. But on the basis that it is needed, I'm going to have to vote for it. But I would like, if there's any way that we can actually look at doing that, I would like it to be done. Thank you.
I'll ask Eamon. Eamon, do you want to, before I go to Councillor Dabbs, do you want to make a comment on the cyclists and the pedestrians?
Well, again, Chairman, through you, my understanding with highway works, etc., such as this, is that they would undergo safety audits by the Highway Authority before formal adoption. I mean, I can pull the drawings up, but there will be adequate crossings still provided for cyclists. But I do take the point from Councillor Wesley that the priority, because you're making this effectively a two-way road, albeit with a priority, that it's now going to be, its use by local residents will be formalised. So you're going to have that element of people wanting to cycle and join the cycleway across the road, but there will be safe crossing points for them. As I say, that's a matter for the Highway Authority in terms of ensuring those crossings meet the relevant standards, and hence before formal adoptions under Section 278 agreements and Section 38 agreements, highway safety audits are undertaken with the Highway Authority. Turning to the future in terms of traffic regulation orders, again, those are open to the Highway Authority to impose traffic restrictions such as yellow lines, etc. It's not for the Planning Authority to do that. So in planning terms, this provides a solution. I take the point, but I think those safeguards are in from a planning point of view and will be looked at further down the line in terms of the technical aspects before formal adoption of the roads.
Thank you, Eamon. Councillor Dabbs.
Just unmute myself. Thank you, Chair. Yes, generally in favour of this. I think words like long overdue have been used by previous councillors in their little speeches. When I was going through this and I went through the traffic audit, and assuming that I remember the details correctly, I think there was a concern about bus access, as in long vehicles knocking things over, which I assume has actually been dealt with. But what concerns me is if you make access easy for a bus, you'll make access easy for HGVs. And my concern is not HGVs going to the building sites and so on in the short term, but shall we say accidental access across the estate by some errant satellite navigation system, which says, you know, take me to I don't know, take me to Rugby or something like that, and you're in Heartlands and it just drives you straight through Middlemore because that is the shortest and quickest route. And there also is a risk, I think, of having a rat run, because again, if you think of the way round, if you're on the A361 to get to Heartlands, yeah, you could just nip through very quickly through Middlemore and you'll be there. So I think that is a concern, but I would recognise that I guess that this is not part of planning, but I would assume that there will be plenty of opportunity and plenty of provision by the relevant council departments as to whatever council it may be at that time, I guess the unitary, to ensure that inappropriate use of the road is not taken, and therefore, you know, commercial traffic can be stopped and through traffic can be discouraged.
Thank you, Councillor Dabbs. Any more speakers, Tony?
Chairman, the planning officer would like to come back, and then we've got Councillor Ritchie waiting to speak.
Okay. Over to you, Eamon.
Yeah, through you, Chairman. Yeah, I acknowledge the points being raised by Councillor Dabbs, and he's quite right. The planning regime has a limit to what it can do. But in my experience with Middlemore, there are traffic sort of speed limits up there in any case. It is actually a 20-mile-an-hour route. So it is. So you'll see that from the A361. There will always be people who don't abide by that. And indeed, there are no examples of delivery vehicles coming into Middlemore to deliver to the shop, to deliver to the pub. The buses already navigate through Middlemore in any case. So in terms of the layout, it's there. Traffic regulation orders, traffic restrictions, etc., lie outside of the planning regime, I'm afraid. But yeah, I'm sure those authorities would aim to ensure enforcement in due course if there was a problem.
Thank you, Eamon. Councillor Ritchie, then.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me come back just on a couple of things. I much agreed with Councillor Wesley's views on the need for a secure crossing. The officers have told us we needn't worry about that because the highways people will tell us what we need to do. I've had the response that no, that we'll wait, that others will tell us what the needs will be in terms of yellow lines, and that there is no way that we should have conditions because we cannot impose conditions on ourselves as a district council. Now, it strikes me, and I don't know if others feel like this too, that is an absolutely feeble position. As a planning committee, there is no way that we would allow a construction traffic to go to other sites on Middlemore. We blocked it for the retirement homes. We have recently, there have been protests from residents because some construction traffic went through to get to the Futures estate that is just again at the end of this little bit of road that we're talking about. And I just feel, surely as a committee, okay, the reality may be that some things we cannot enforce because we try and enforce things in ourselves, or because we have got to wait and see what the highways are going to do. As a committee, should we not be expressing a view on what we think is right for this particular bit of road? I don't just mean in terms of where you can drive, but in planning terms, I just feel the fact that it is a road application should not make us less decisive in what we feel should happen here.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie.
Chairman, the planning officer would like to come back on that point.
Eamon.
Again, to Councillor Ritchie, through you, Chairman, you are the planning committee, so you are entitled to come to a view of what conditions you wish to impose. That said, we are a district council and we do act responsibly when carrying out our developments. What the advice I did give to you was conditions could be imposed, but no, our expectation is as a local authority, we will be acting responsibly in any case. And in any case, we could not enforce against our conditions. But you can impose the condition if you so wish, if that's the mind of the council as local planning authority and you as planning committee members.
Okay. Right. A quick one then, Councillor Ritchie.
I would therefore like to move an amendment to the proposal to say that there should be at least 2 extra conditions. There should be a condition that the prohibition on construction traffic for the broadening of the road or for other construction sites in Middlemore, the prohibition on construction traffic coming along Farnborough Drive from the A361 should remain in place. Sorry, somebody can tidy up the logic of my sentences. And the second point, which I felt needed more emphasis, was that raised by Councillor Wesley. There should be a condition that an appropriate safe crossing for pedestrians and cyclists shall be put in place that recognises the importance of the cycle routes from the town centre to Middlemore and potentially beyond.
Chairman, the planning officer would like to come back on that point.
Okay, Eamon. Eamon, go. We're not hearing you.
Yeah, just to come back on the Councillor Ritchie's reference to other developments and construction management schemes. Yes, they are subject to conditions, and yes, those already have construction management schemes approved under those conditions. So they are, as it were, enforceable under those planning permissions. We couldn't do that in respect of this current application. If members feel that it's necessary in respect of this particular development to have a construction management program agreed, you're perfectly entitled to come to that view. I mean, what I would say is that in our dealings with our colleagues, you'll see it in notes number 3, there are details of a works compounds area which will be provided within the Heartlands estate on land owned by Daventry District Council. So the implication there is that all developed construction traffic will come in via Heartlands of the A45 straight to the site. In my experience, very rarely have those construction management routing agreements been breached. There are a couple of examples, but not very many. And my expectation of the council, as the developer here, that they would be imposing similar restrictions. But as I say, as a planning authority, you're perfectly entitled to come to a different view and impose a condition for the sake of clarity. On the point with cycle crossing, again, if you feel that that's a detail missing from this particular application that you feel should be clarified, then again, you're entitled to come to a view and say, well, we want a condition to require those details to be submitted, agreed and implemented in accordance with those details before either the development commences or before the new improved road works are brought into use. So you are free to come to a view. We have merely put to you our assessment as planning officers, and also bearing in mind that the advice in the MPPF is that we must assume that all other regulations are working effectively and will be enforced by the relevant authorities. So, for example, traffic regulation orders, etc., traffic highways acts, etc., all work effectively. So it's not for the planning authority and not for the planning regime to try and stray into the remit of other authorities. But I recognise there are a couple of details that seem to be concerned to members. Perfectly happy for you to consider those. And if you feel the need for those conditions, you can vote on it. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. I will go back to the proposer and see whether he wants to incorporate those conditions in his proposal or not. You've heard the couple of conditions that wants to be put into the proposal, and you've heard the officer's answer to put in those conditions in. Is it your wish that you incorporate those two conditions or not, proposer? Councillor James, you're muted. You'll find it in a minute.
Is that it?
Yeah, you're there.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I think it's superfluous, really. We're going to be putting in a condition, that we probably can't enforce anyway, and that, you know, we are just ignoring what has already been done. The plan, a road audit, has already been done. It really is unnecessary.
Okay, so the seconder, are you happy with the proposer's view on that? And that's Malcolm Longley. Councillor Longley. You're muted.
I'm very happy to follow David on this one.
Okay, right. So if this fails, Councillor, you can then put in a proposal that's different from the current proposal. but the proposal is to accept officers' advice as it is.
Chair,
Although,
Chair, I made a proposal which has not been accepted by Councillor James or Councillor Longley, but you haven't invited, I'm not expecting this to be successful, but you haven't invited the committee to, or anybody else in the committee. Do they wish to second the amendment?
Well, because we're going to deal with the proposal first, and I asked the proposer whether he would consider incorporating your amendment, your proposed amendment into his proposal, which is only the addition of a couple of parts to it, and he didn't, and nor was the seconder. So if this fails, you can then make a different proposal, but we're going to deal with this proposal first.
Can I ask for advice from whether it's Tony Gillett or whoever, yes, as the monitoring officer, if that is indeed the normal practice, to vote on a proposal while there is still under discussion an amendment to that proposal being debated or ready to be debated.
Can I make a point before Tony does come in? That over the years, we've had this argument tons of times, must be 10 times, and you must have brought them up 4 or 5 times. We deal with the proposal first. If that proposal fails, we deal with another proposal, whether it be called an amendment or not. As in this case, the amendment was only the addition of two conditions to the current proposal. I asked the current proposer whether he was willing to accept it. He wasn't willing to, and nor was the seconder. So we need a separate proposal for that if this one fails.
Chair, can I just explain my position here? Procedurally, I expect that if this proposal is put, it will be accepted. I will certainly vote for it. I mean, there's no question about that. But if we simply vote on it and it's accepted, then that seems to be the end of the process. It doesn't leave open the opportunity for what many might regard as an improvement on the proposal that they have already agreed. And it preempts part of the discussion if things are done in that order. It is not the normal procedure for Parliament or other organisations that I'm familiar with, but I leave it with you.
Tony?
Chairman, I think perhaps the way to resolve this is to seek a seconder for Councillor Ritchie's amendment, and if he has a seconder, then to take a vote on that amendment.
Okay, well, that would be a quick way of doing it. Yes, do you have a seconder?
Me.
Chairman, Councillor Wesley has got his hand up. I'm not sure where he's...
Right, are you seconding the amendment?
I am.
Okay. All those in favour of the amendment, can you please answer Marina's roll call? So if you say for, you're for adding those 2 conditions. If you say against, you're against adding those two conditions. Okay. Over to you, Marina.
Councillor Alan Chandler.
Against, Chairman.
Councillor Daniel Cribbin.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Rupert Frost.
Against.
Councillor Jonathan Harris.
For.
Councillor Cecile Irving Swift.
Cecile, you're muted.
It's there. Sorry. Against.
Councillor David James.
Against.
Councillor Malcolm Longley.
Against.
Councillor Kevin Parker.
Against.
Councillor Ken Ritchie.
Ken? Councillor Ritchie, you're muted.
I presume he's in favour.
My apologies for. Yeah.
Councillor Ian Robertson.
Are you there, Councillor Robertson? Well, you are there.
Against.
Councillor David Smith.
Against.
Councillor Mark Wesley.
For.
And the result is?
4 in favour, 9 against.
Right, the amendment is lost. We go back to the proposal now. So the proposal is that the application be approved according to the officer's advice, which has been seconded. All those in favour? Again, Marina, over to you.
Alan Chandler, sorry, Councillor Alan Chandler.
For.
Councillor Daniel Cribbin.
For.
Councillor Stephen Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Rupert Frost.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Harris.
For.
Councillor Cecile Irving Swift.
For. For.
David James. Councillor David James.
For.
Councillor Malcolm Longley.
For.
Councillor Kevin Parker.
For.
Councillor Ken Ritchie.
For.
Councillor Ian Robertson.
For.
Councillor David Smith.
For.
Councillor Mark Wesley.
For.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. The application is approved as per officer's advice. That this time is the last application. I do apologise for trying to get the meeting finished sooner. No, I don't really, because we can all have our food afterwards. So I don't really apologise. Well, I hope it was fairly successful. I hope you enjoyed it. And perhaps we'll have more applications next time. So thank you all for attending, or thank you for watching. If we do have 2 people watching, I'm grateful. And thank you, and a very good evening to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Right.